Hello, this is Toby, and in this video I want to talk about my principles for open-ended work. This is not necessarily meant to be definitive principles. These are the things that I think work pretty well for me, but it may not work for everyone. So these are my principles for open-ended work, and the reason they came about is because this past weekend, I was sitting down asking myself, what are my principles for my work? Being that my work is very open-ended, I feel like I needed sort of a list of things, a checklist or a reminder for myself to use whenever I feel a little lost. So these are my principles. Take it with a grain of salt. I hope it might be helpful for someone, and I would like to share it with you. First of all, what do I mean by open-ended work? Well, I think these are some examples that I thought of, which would typically be very open-ended. Any kind of research work, like scientific research, psychology research, or research in computer science, research in any field, I believe, is pretty open-ended. You get to choose the topic that you would like to research, and you get to choose the methodologies that you would use. Art, if you are an artist and you produce art as well as composing music, the equivalent of art in software would be open source work. So if you produce open source software, it can potentially be very open-ended because you choose what you build. Woodworking is something I've got interested in recently, and I feel like that is also a very open-ended thing. Blogging and YouTubing, if you produce YouTube videos like I do here, again, you get to choose what you put your effort and energy into. Is your job open-ended? I think every job has a amount of open-endedness, and it's a continuum. It's not a binary 1 or 0 whether your job is open-ended or not. There are certainly types of jobs that are more open-ended than others. For example, so Google is known for their 20% time with which you can work on whatever project that you choose. But I imagine that in any kind of software work, there is a large amount of open-endedness in given a problem, how you choose to solve that is very much up to you. A very close-ended job, opposite of open-ended, would probably be like a cashier, which I used to work as at a summer job. But, it's a continuum. It's not a binary condition. If you are doing something that is very open-ended, how do you choose what to work on? You have a blank canvas. How do you choose? Even if your job is only somewhat open-ended, there is still a question of, well, given that my boss wants me to solve this problem, well, there are actually many ways I could tackle that problem. Which of those ways do I choose to work on? Principle number 1 is feed your obsessions. If you're really into something, let yourself get into that. I believe that is important and productive because that gives you a lot of energy. Whenever you're really, really obsessed about something, you have so much drive to go after it. As you know, well, I don't know if you know or not, but Malcolm Gladwell made famous the 10,000 hour rule, right? Well, how are you gonna reach those 10,000 hours of practice in any given discipline? Well, if you're obsessed about it, you will probably put a lot of time into it. I feel that if you're forced into practicing because somebody told you you have to practice, that's not nearly as effective because the moment that person is not there, you're not going to do that anymore. And also, even the quality suffers for the time that you are practicing in those situations. Another rule I gave myself, kind of in the same vein, is follow the mystery. What are the mysteries to life. Whatever I'm into at the moment, what are the parts of it that's the most mysterious, that I most want to find out the ending to? I think a lot of times when I'm debugging, it's like a mystery novel for me, even though I'm not a big mystery novel reader. But when come time to debugging or solving some technical problem, it's like the obsession that people have for mystery novels that I have for these books that I'm trying to solve. I have to get to the bottom of it. Whatever is mysterious to me, that's what gets my motivation going. Now, I would be remiss if I did not mention the dangers of obsession. The word obsession itself has this negative tone to it, and there's good reason for that. One obvious way that danger arises with obsession is addictive behavior. When you're addicted to something that negatively impacts your life, negatively impacts your work. And so you want to be aware of that, be looking for that. And when you see yourself engaging in addictive behaviors, you need to make note of that and curtail it in some way. When you feel like you have to do something, even though you don't want to, but you cannot stop yourself from doing it. And then after having done the thing, you regret having done it. I think that's a sure sign of addictive behavior, and if you see yourself doing that, notice it and take action in some way to curtail that. Another rule that I wrote is reevaluate often. Reevaluate as in reconsider all of the priorities in your list or on your mind. Regularly, often. And this is something that David Allen of Getting Things Done promotes. And it's also something that I learned a lot from Tim Ferriss. Tim Ferriss has a method for sort of evaluating your priorities. No matter which method you use to reevaluate your things, the main point I want to make is you should reevaluate them often. The way I do it currently is I use a pen and paper or notebook with a blank page, and I want to sort of do a mind dump. I want to write down all of the things that are on my mind without referring to any pre-existing notes. It's like a snapshot of my mind, right? And then after I write down all the things, I want to look through each one and try to prioritize them in some way. I use a method that I adapted from the Tim Ferriss's method, which I'll try to link that as well. But basically, I look at each one and I ask myself, like, how happy would I be if this thing has been taken care of? That feeling that I have for whatever that thing on my mind is very much in the moment, which is it's an interesting thing. I'm doing that at that moment, but the next time I do it, that my prioritization might change, which is kind of why you should reevaluate often. You allow yourself to change, you allow your priorities to change, but over time, you can look for the things that are stable, things that you evaluate in a stable way, and things that fluctuate a lot. And by seeing that data over time, even though I don't track the data very rigorously, but just seeing how your mind change over time will give you a lot of insight into yourself and into what things you like to do. The next principle is pay attention to your diet. And by your diet, I don't mean food. I actually mean the thoughts that go through your mind. So the diet of your mind. There's this psychological thing called the recency effect. The things that are on your mind most recently tend to have a lot more say into the way you behave. And because of that, you can easily be manipulated by the external environment that you come into contact with. So you're easily influenced by other people that you talk to, by or by other people that, like, maybe you watch YouTube videos, so you get influenced by the people that talk in those videos. Or if you use social media, you get influenced by the people that you follow on social media and so forth. So all those things influence your mind and therefore can come into play when you're reevaluating your priorities. And that it's important for you to know, because you have a direction in where you're going, and you want that direction to be aligned with what your long-term goals are. But if the things that you're feeding your mind, the diet of your mind, do not align with your long-term direction, then that can be counterproductive to your goals. So you want to pay attention to your diet. If the thoughts that you're taking in from the outside are not necessarily the thoughts that you want to be having inside your own mind, then you might want to rethink those things. And also, it's actually not too hard to get reacquainted with old thoughts, so to speak. So if you feel like, oh my God, there's this older idea that I haven't touched in a while, or this older project that I haven't touched in a while, and I wish that I could bring it back. All you have to do is bring that back into your consciousness. Think about the project. Use a pencil and paper or a notebook and do some brainstorming about that project or that idea. And then, boom, that idea comes back into the diet of your mind, and you're thinking about it again. The next principle is allow diversions. The reason you want to allow diversions is, well, number one, it's fun. Diversions are actually quite a bit of fun. It gives you variety in your work. It can give you relaxation. If you are too focused, you could burn out and you're not having fun anymore. And when you're not having a lot of fun, your motivation is going to decrease. So by allowing diversions, you can, in the long run, give yourself a more healthy, you can allow your work to stay more healthy. This next principle kind of backs up the previous one, which is that it's okay to leave a project and then come back to it later. There's actually a lot of benefit to doing that. When you leave a project for a few months or even a year or more than a year, I don't know, and then come back to the project, you come back to that project with a brand new perspective. You're a different person now because you have evolved as a person. The new insights that you have as the new person you are can be very beneficial to that old project and can give that old project new life. It's almost like getting a partner from a different walk of life to join your project in a way. One story from Steve Jobs that I've heard is where that happened is the iPad. Apple and Steve Jobs, I suppose, came up with the iPad before the iPhone, actually. Even though the iPhone came to market before the iPad, they came up with the concept of the iPad and started working on it. But then later on, they realized that the iPhone was going to be a more immediate need. And so they shelved the iPad project, worked on the iPhone, and when the iPhone got released and became successful, they went back to the iPad. And now iPad is the success that it is. The next principle is balance, focus versus relaxation, which is kind of what a lot of the previous principles allude to. You want to have a lot of focus on your work, but at the same time, you don't want to be so focused that you get burnt out. It's like a string. You want it to be taut, but not tight. That's what I've heard. It's okay that at times your focus is really high and then other times your focus go down a bit, and It's like a stock market where it goes up and down, and that's okay. Just on the grander scale, you want a balance between focus and relaxation. That's all that I have to share with you. I hope that this is interesting. I personally really thrive in open-ended work. I know that not everybody is like that. If you're not like that, that's totally fine. Hopefully these things that I said can serve to you as just a curiosity that you might consider.